Hi, I'm Ellen Voss, the Aquatic Invasive Species Program Director with River Alliance of Wisconsin. River Alliance is a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering people to protect and restore water.
Hi, I'm Laura Holder, the Executive Director of Midwest Conservation Dogs, a nonprofit that works alongside dogs to leverage the power of canine scent detection one wet nose at a time.
March 2020 was a scary time, if you recall. And as we were all trying to keep up with the latest information on a scary new virus that was making its way across the globe, a light of hope for all of us nature lovers was that spending time outdoors was considered a good thing and highly recommended by health experts and government leaders alike. Wisconsinites found all kinds of fun ways to spend time outside, from hiking and biking to fishing and paddling.
Fishing license sales skyrocketed during the pandemic. And while it's great that people are finding ways to be outside on the water, for me, news articles like this raised a tiny red flag. Tourism is a major pathway for the spread of invasive species, and all that extra time on the water comes at a cost, providing new opportunities for unwanted hitchhikers to get a free ride to new locations.
We were especially concerned about Wisconsin's driftless area. If you're a fly fisher person, you're probably already very familiar with this part of the state that's famous for its unique geology and thousands of miles of trout creeks. People come from all over the world to fish these cold water streams that are home to native brook trout as well as brown and rainbow trout. So we had this idea. Dogs have been used to sniff out everything from cancer to endangered species. What if we could train dogs to detect a particularly worrisome snail species that's been slowly invading Wisconsin's rivers and streams? Meet Nina, the New Zealand mudsnail. As her name suggests, she's originally from New Zealand. She was born pregnant, and she can have over 200 babies every year. She lives in water, but incredibly, because of a trap door at the entrance to her shell, she can live outside of water for almost a month. She can also survive the amazing and disgusting journey through fish guts. Fish can eat these snails, but they often go undigested, allowing Nina to go on her merry way with an interesting story to tell. Finally, Nina can start a whole new population of snails all by herself. That's right, folks, it only takes one snail to start a new population. Nina and her fellow snails came to Wisconsin back in 2012, and unfortunately for us, they really seem to love it here. Her favorite hiding places are the bottoms of wading boots and shoelace eyelets, basically anywhere she can attach herself without getting seen. And finally, her favorite hobby is hitchhiking. Snails can't travel very fast or far on their own, so hitching a ride without permission is her favorite mode of transportation. Here's how you can tell Nina apart from other species of snail. First of all, she's super small, about the size of a grain of rice. 2, she's cone-shaped, and her shell has 5 to 6 whorls. 3rd, she's right-handed. If you hold her in your hand with the point facing up, the opening to her shell will be on the right side. Finally, she has a trapdoor called an operculum that she can use to seal off that opening.
Now that we have learned how to identify Nina and her teeny tiny New Zealand friends, let's meet the dogs that learned how to sniff them out. Meet Canine Betty White and Canine Ernie. Weighing in at 44 pounds, Canine Betty White is a 1-year-old female Labrador Retriever. In addition to sniffing out New Zealand mudsnails, she also locates bumblebee nests in the warm weather season. Hitting the scales at 60 pounds of stud muffin, we have Canine Ernie, a 3-year-old male Labrador Retriever. Canine Ernie's been using his nose for science for several years, but especially likes to find the teeny tiny New Zealand mudsnail. So you might be wondering, why are we using dogs to find teeny tiny snails? Well, the answer is quite simple. Their sense of smell is just incredible. A professional detection dog can identify the absence or presence of a target odor. That's a fancy term for something we train them to find. All the way down to parts per trillion, which is simply amazing. A canine sense of smell is about 40 times greater than that of us humans. And, for us to try and visualize what that's like, think of this. A dog can detect 1 teaspoon of sugar in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Another way to visualize this, when you're cooking food, You might smell Italian food when you're making lasagna, but your dog smells every single ingredient, and even where that ingredient is sourced. Our goal for the New Zealand Mudsnail work is to have the dogs locate one individual snail in a half of a cup of sediment. So you're probably curious, how do we train our dogs to find New Zealand mudsnails? The first step is to locate training samples. In the case of Nina and the New Zealand Mudsnail clan, our project partners were able to isolate snails and send them to us. Once we had the training samples, we placed them into sterile mason jars with mesh lids, and then we used a process called pairing to introduce the target odor to the dogs. Pairing is where you take the dog's favorite reward and put it right on top of the mesh lid. During this process, the dog learns that once they go over and smell the container, they immediately get to reward themselves. This is a process called classical conditioning. From there, we remove the pairing and quickly add in different non-target odors that the dog may encounter in the natural environment where the snails are found. This process of introducing non-target odors and making sure the dog understands that every time that they smell the New Zealand mudsnail, they're going to get their paycheck is something that is repeated multiple times before the dogs are ready to do their blind trials. While the dogs were busy learning the smell of the New Zealand mudsnail, our project partners were busy collecting sediment from various locations throughout the state of Wisconsin.
The study design for the project looked a little something like this. We collected sediments from 3 kinds of streams in southern Wisconsin. Type 1, or known positives, were streams like Black Earth Creek and Badger Mill Creek that are already known to contain New Zealand mudsnails. Type 2, or known negatives, were streams that don't currently have this snail species. And Type 3 were unknowns, streams that may or may not be invaded with Nina and her babies. For the sample collection itself, we enlisted the help of our partner organizations, including the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and Upper Sugar River Watershed Association. First, we collected sediments from the 3 kinds of streams already mentioned. Those sediments were then placed in Ziploc bags and frozen on ice. Those ice blocks were then shipped to Milwaukee so the doggos could sniff the sediments and tell us what they found.
In total, the dogs completed 8 weeks of rigorous training where they were put to work multiple days a week. After 8 weeks, we were ready to test the dogs' sniffing superpowers. On November 12th, 2020, all of the project collaborators got together in a parking lot in Milwaukee County. This day, we tested the dogs' skills by laying out 35 different locations for the dogs to sniff for absence or presence of the New Zealand mudsnails. The 35 locations were run blind by Canine Betty White and Canine Ernie, along with their handler Laura. What this means is that none of them knew which of the 35 locations would potentially be contaminated with the New Zealand mudsnails or free from any New Zealand mudsnails. 5 separate runs of 7 locations were set up in a straight line drill, approximately with 8 to 10 feet between each of the jars. With the first set of 7 locations set out in the search area, the dogs were ready to get started. In this video, you'll see Canine Ernie doing a straight line drill of 7 locations with his handler, Laura. Laura is looking for indications of the presence of New Zealand mudsnails by any kind of significant behavior changes from Canine Ernie. He typically does a very distinctive freeze in place and throws his head up and looks towards Laura to indicate that he's found one of his targets. Canine Betty White also got an opportunity to run the same straight line drills. In this video, you'll see her working very, very hard with her head down, nose to the ground, sniffing for snails. At the end of the day, the results were in and extremely positive. Canine Betty White had a 75% accuracy rate, and Canine Ernie had an 80% accuracy rate. These results indicate that the dogs' noses are incredibly valuable to sniffing out New Zealand mudsnail populations in sediment.
This project has potentially huge implications for the rapid detection of the snail in Wisconsin and elsewhere. The problem with current methods is that they're really slow and/or expensive. And when you have a snail like this that can spread so quickly, there's really no time to spare. If this works, we can get a really fast presence-absent snapshot for literally any stream or lake in the whole state. You might be thinking, why should I care about this? Well, if you're here, you love water. And if you love water, preventing the spread of invasive species is a really big deal. If you've ever tried to paddle through a lake that's infested with Eurasian water milfoil, or tried to cast a fly line over a patch of Japanese hops growing along a stream bank, you know how frustrating invasive species can be. Unfortunately, though, invasive species do a whole lot more than just ruin aesthetics and make recreating difficult. They can have devastating impacts on the native species that are actually supposed to be in any given habitat. We don't yet know the total impact of what the introduction of New Zealand mudsnails means for Wisconsin's trout creeks, but researchers are working hard to figure out what they might be. These snails can reach extremely high densities very quickly. We also know that they compete directly for food and space with native aquatic insects that fish, like trout, prefer to eat. The fact that you enjoy spending time on and in water for fun is a huge asset. There are over 13,000 miles of navigable streams in Wisconsin, and agency folks can't monitor them all. We always need more eyes on the water, and that's where you come in. Our hope is that while you're out doing what you already love, you'll keep an eye out and report back what you find. Outdoor gear is really expensive, but luckily the things you're already doing to take care of it are also really good at getting rid of invasive species. When you're done fishing for the day, make sure you clean up your gear really well with a stiff bristled brush. And if you're still using felt, think about ditching it for good. Nina and her pals are really good at hiding, so make sure you pay close attention to the nooks and crannies of your boots and waders that are especially good hiding places. Any stiff bristled brush will work. What matters is that you use it before you leave the stream. It's also a really good idea to pour fresh water over your gear as well before you head out to your next fishing spot. So remember, after you're done playing, clean, drain, and dry your equipment. It's required by law in Wisconsin, and it's our best chance at preventing invasive species from spreading. Second, if you find something that looks a little suspicious when you're out recreating, report what you find. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources website has instructions for what to do. You can also report your findings on great apps like EdMaps and iNaturalist. All you have to do is create an account, log in, and report what you find. Finally, if you want to dig a little deeper, check out our website for more opportunities to get involved and support the work we do. Join us for a Project Red float or sign up to volunteer at Snapshot Day. We'll give you all the training you need to identify New Zealand mudsnails and other invasive species so you can become a super detector when you're out enjoying Wisconsin's water.
On behalf of all of our project collaborators, Midwest Conservation Dogs wants to thank you for watching this presentation. Thank you for taking an interest in what you can do to stop the spread of aquatic invasive species and keep our Wisconsin waterways clean. Midwest Conservation Dogs will soon be renamed to Conservation Dogs Collective. Our nonprofit organization relies on the support and generosity of people just like you. Please visit our website at midwestconservationdogs.com to learn more about our work and our incredible dogs.